Hi, I'm Kaius Tenchi, director of the Toronto Motorcycle Film Festival, and I want to welcome you to this really special live conversation with Daniel Rintz, who is the director and one of the main characters in the amazing movie that we got to see over the course of the festival called Somewhere Else Together. So let me bring in Daniel and have him join us. Hey, Daniel.
Hi, Kaius. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Germany at this time. I really appreciate the time that you're going to be spending with us. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
So we opened up the festival with Somewhere Else Together. We had a live premiere of it. It streamed on the Thursday night, October 1st, as our first movie. And it was great and fun to watch it together online with people. And we've received like a lot of positive feedback about the movie. I mean, it's a wonderful story, beautifully shot, beautifully narrated, incredible highs and lows that you and Josephine went through. So I want to dig into a little bit of that and get some of that backstory. Why don't we start by talking about your trip? So this wasn't the first time that you've done a massive trip like this.
Correct.
So back in 2008, you did this trip, which is highlighted in blue on this map. So for 3 years, you traveled from, hard to tell on the map, somewhere in Europe, maybe from Germany, down through and over to New Zealand. And then over the course of that is when you and Josephine met, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And then 3 years later, you did this second trip. I should mention that first trip became a movie called Somewhere Else Tomorrow, which was an amazing film. And then the second trip, highlighted in red, a 3-year span that started, I guess, in North America, looks like in New York, and then up and all the way down, the long way down, and then back up through Africa and back to Europe. And that became the movie that we're watching now, which is Somewhere Else Together. So this time it was you and Josephine together.
Yes.
Amazing. Let me start by, I'm going to play the clip or the trailer for the movie, because I think it's a really great summary of some of the landscapes, the people that you've met, which is a huge part of the film, some of the challenges that you encountered, and sort of the purpose of the trip, if you will. So let's play that clip. I mean, amazing. That's a great trailer, by the way. The music, the way it crescendos, and
Thank
the
you.
cinematography in it is amazing. So before we go deep into some of the specifics of the trip and the movie, is there anything you want to say, like from a overarching perspective about your trip? Or
Well,
about
I
the
haven't watched the trailer in a long while, and watching it right now makes me want to go back on the road.
film?
No, I'm happy for your questions. Please let me know.
Sure. So let me start with one of the moments that really stuck out for me. So on your leg down, when you got to Ushuaia at the end of the road, you, on one hand, were excited to be there. On the other hand, it felt a little anticlimactic. And I felt it off of you
Right.
watching it. And I related to that because I mean I have never done a journey like that, not even close to it. But sometimes you go on little trips or whatever, or you go out and you try to reach this goal, and then you get there and you're like, okay. So that was interesting, and I really felt it
Yeah.
when we were watching your film. So I want to maybe just ask about that. Like, why do you think that is? Because I think that that's a pretty common feeling that a lot of people have once they've reached like a certain goal, a milestone that they want to hit.
I think in our case, it has something to do with the fact that it was the second big trip. I mean, to go back further a little bit more, I've been traveling since, I don't know, since my early 20s, so for a long time, 15, 20 years. On and off. Sometimes the trip would last a couple of months. Other times the trip would last a couple of years. It was only with this motorcycle trip, with the attempt to circumnavigate the world by motorcycle, that I made movies about it. So the first movie, the first trip from Europe down to New Zealand, that was a huge thing for me. It was a long way. It took 3 years. I started to travel without any budget, so I had to earn all the money along the way, the money that I needed for the trip. So this was the first really big undertaking as far as trips go. Other trips would take me far places, but I would maybe stay in a country for a while and work, and it was just different. I was on the move for 3 years, so that was an extreme and also a very intense experience for me. And trying to repeat this, it will never work. A lot of people that do big trips or travel for a long time will confirm this. If you try to get this feeling from your very first, very big, overwhelming project trip, it's not really possible. So when we traveled the Americas from all the way in the north, from Dead Horse, Alaska, the northernmost motorable point, all the way down to Ushuaia, it was fantastic. It was a fantastic experience, not only because I got to do it with the love of my life, but also because we both were experienced travelers by then. So we weren't running into like crazy situations anymore, because we kind of knew how to handle a lot of things, a lot of the everyday travel stuff like border crossings or getting visas or dealing with or finding jobs along the way, all these things. So it was more like a vacation for us. It was wonderful. It was extreme in terms of beauty of the landscapes and the people we met. It was wonderful, but it didn't take us out of our comfort zone the way that the first trip did. We didn't transform as much. We didn't grow as much. So reaching the southern point in Argentina felt fantastic, but we also felt sad because the trip had come to an end and we weren't any smarter about what we're going to do from that point on. One of the things that motivated us to complete the circumnavigation around the world by motorcycle is that we wanted to talk to as many people as possible and find out what they're looking for in life, how they live their life, what their opportunities are and their dreams, to see if we can mix together the best ideas from all around the world to create our own lifestyle or way of life. And reaching the southern point in Argentina didn't give us the sense that we had accomplished that. So we kind of needed a bigger challenge. And going through Africa without money or trying to make money along the way certainly was the challenge, or proved to be the challenge that we've been looking for. We really hit a wall. We found the point where we felt it's enough. We physically, mentally, we're exhausted. We came to a point where we couldn't absorb any more information. Every day for years and years is extraordinary. And we had to go back into our photo library and look what happened a month ago or a half a year ago to see, man, this happened. I can't even believe it. So we really found our master in Africa. We really ran out of fuel, basically, and that's what we needed. And we couldn't have happily said this is the end of the trip in Argentina because we weren't ready to go home.
Yeah. When you got to Ushuaia and you had that experience, that sort of anticlimactic experience, were you thinking at that point, let's just go back home, or were you pretty determined, let's continue on this journey?
Well, the plan was to go from Alaska to Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
There were certain factors that made us think we shouldn't drag out the duration of this trip for too long. Let's say 18 months, maybe 2 years, and then we'll see where we go. And after the 2 years that we needed to go from the north to all the way to the south, we weren't finished. We started thinking the closer we came to Ushuaia, the more we were thinking, the trip is coming to an end. We're not ready yet. We're not ready to go home. So what is the option?
Mm-hmm.
And then Africa came up naturally.
Yeah. You had mentioned that Africa really provided what you were looking for in terms of like really pushing you and the challenge. And in particular, you mentioned the people. And for me, the people that you interacted with on that leg of the journey was really amazing. So like some moments really stood out, like when you were in the Himba community.
Yeah.
I mean, incredible. It was beautiful to see. It's a part of a world or a culture that we're not familiar with. Very few of us will get the opportunity to meet them and encounter them. What was that like? How long were you there? And talk a little bit about the interaction with the Himba tribe.
If you travel to Namibia, it's actually fairly easy to encounter them and meet them. But we didn't want the touristy way of hanging out with an indigenous group. There's always a touristy way, whether you go to Taj Mahal, the pyramids, or the World Trade Center. There's a tourist, you pay something, and then some guide introduces you to a watered down version of their actual life. We didn't want that, and but it was very important for us to have the experience. We would have been, rather than having no experience, you would have been happy with the touristy way. But we made some effort to get deeper into their territory and talk to a lot of people to see where we can have an experience as authentic as possible.
Yeah.
And so we met someone who happened to speak English. So John, his name was. He just came back from studying in Windhoek, which is the capital of Namibia, and he went back to his tribe, and his motive was to carry their tradition or show it to the world in order for them to have a better chance of surviving, or their tradition to survive. And so he introduced us, and he made it possible for us to encounter a village that just came out of a several-day ceremony. I think it was a wedding and a funeral, very close to one another. So he wrote us a letter, an introduction letter. We gave it to the chief of the village, so we were allowed to stay there and take photographs and film. The experience was, I mean, the movie shows about 5 or 6 minutes of that time that we spent there. I know that pretty much exactly because when I shortened the movie to a digestible length of just under 2 hours, I remember going through all the scenes and having to cut a little bit here, a little bit there, just to make it fit and not lose too many of my darlings, so to say. And so these 6 minutes in the film, they give you a good idea what it was. But thinking back to the experience of being there, it was just so intense and so it's
evident,
indescribable. We were sitting in this hut. It was super hot outside, 45 degrees. Do you have Celsius or Fahrenheit in Canada?
Celsius.
Celsius, yeah.
Celsius, yeah.
Yeah, it was very, very, very hot, and there were the women. They sat in the hut, and we couldn't communicate too well because we didn't share a common language. But just sitting there together, you could feel that there was some communication, nonverbal, going on. They were curious about our lives, and we were curious about their lives. And we took pictures of them, and they looked at the pictures, and they showed us how they prepare their food. They showed us how they live, and everything that you can do non-verbally. It was very, very interesting. Very. I mean, it's mind-blowing. I was just thinking the diversity of how a human can live on this planet right now.
Yeah.
Isn't that immense?
Yes.
I don't know if it's ever been this wide. I mean, 500, 1,000 years ago, was it maybe a little bit more homogeneous? But today, you can in Singapore, you live in your air-conditioned apartment. You go into your air-conditioned car, drive to your air-conditioned office.
Yeah.
Everything is so artificial and sterile.
Yeah.
And then on the other part in another part of the world, you sit in a wooden hut, and
yeah,
it's just incredible.
And it seems like those two places are so far away, like almost as if it was a different planet. Like distance-wise, it seems like it's not here; it's so far away, but really it's so close. And if you think about it, as we're sitting here right now, like at this very second, somebody in Namibia is having a completely different experience and living their life completely differently than we are. It's incredible.
Yeah.
How long were you there amongst them?
A couple of days, I think. Not very long, because I think it was 2 or 3 days. We couldn't stay too long because it was very remote, and we had to carry water and food. We could have participated in eating their food, but it could have been risky. because you're not used to their bacteria. So, and on the motorcycle, there's only so much that you can carry. So it wasn't too long, but also enough to be honest. I mean, coming back into civilization, we were quite exhausted, not only from the climate, from the heat and the remoteness, also from the experience, just to work through it,
digest it and process
it.
Exactly. I understand that. I just want to pop in this one comment from one of our viewers right now, who's saying, what a great movie. I loved the first one, but the sequel has much better filming and editing. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Dan. Let me just quickly check. I think I know this person.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Dan, I think Mirabent.
Yeah, I think he's been a very generous supporter of the second movie, of the post-production of it, which I'm very grateful for. Yes, we have emailed back and forth a couple of times. I know him. But thanks, Dan, for the comment.
Okay, you were mentioning about the challenge or the tiredness, let's say, like when you got back, like to process everything that you went through and so on. So I wanted to ask a little bit about that. In the movie, it's got this real dichotomy. Like on one hand, we see these absolutely beautiful vistas, gorgeous landscapes, beautiful animals, the savanna, beautiful cultures. And then we also see hardship and people struggling and ruts on the road that are, meters deep, it looks like. And, cars that are going like sideways down the road, and trucks that are tipped over, like a real hard time, and people are struggling. How do you reconcile those two things, this beauty and this struggle at the same time?
That's a good question. I have asked myself that a lot of times. But when you're on the road, at least for me, when I'm on the road, it's like a switch, and the mindset changes. Look, I think that there is only beauty. There's not really struggling, because struggling is in the mind. If you determine, or if you say, look, these people living in this country, they have to walk several hours to fetch their water every day. For you or me, that would be a struggle, because it would be physical work. I'm usually pushing a mouse back and forth and make movies, So the mind says it's struggle, it's too hot, it's too dusty, I don't have health insurance, it's a struggle, It's all like, it's not, I don't know how to describe it. The people there that are used to this kind of life, they don't see it as struggle, it's just their life, you see?
Yeah.
And I think it works in both directions. I mean, if I went to a very remote village, to live in a remote village somewhere in Africa, I would struggle for quite a while to adapt to their lifestyle. But I see it with a lot of people also that are refugees or escaped from other places in the world into Europe or North America in search for a better life. And then they get there and they realize it's a way different life, and they struggle with other things. From what I've observed, that in a lot of places around the world, the society and the way the people live together is very differently structured than, for example, in Europe. You see, a lot of the jobs are taken, or the job of living together is taken care of by the government. You see, you can very easily live on your own for most of your life without needing anyone. You have all these insurances and nets and social nets that that you just have to go work, and then you don't need anyone else. And in other parts of the world, they need each other for several. Just the way they live together is very closely knit.
That's really insightful. Actually, I never thought about that. That's so true.
So when someone who grew up in a very tight community comes to Europe and realizes, oh my God, I'm here. Everything is different. It's so cold. People don't talk to each other. They don't smile on the street, and I don't have my friends around me. It's very, very hard for them. So when you ask how do you reconcile struggle and beauty, I think most of the time, I mean, I'm not the smartest to say. I'm not sure. It's just from my observation. I think struggle is mainly from the mind. It's your judgment of the situation, and you say, I can deal with that, or I don't want to deal with that, or I couldn't deal with it. And that creates a struggle. But when you see poor people living in the slums of India, yes, it's tough life for them. They're like active 20 hours a day. They have to, every day is a survival process for them. But if you look into their eyes, if you look at them and ask about their lives, I would almost guarantee you that most of them feel that they're happier than if you ask people on the street somewhere here in Germany.
I think you're right. Yeah, so I think you're right. And you mentioned that in part of the movie, like you were going through a lot of hard times, and then it's almost like you let that go, and you were, I forgot the exact words that you used, but you weren't part of the struggles. You were just watching it sort of go by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I said something like, we stopped judging it.
Yes.
We stopped judging that is beautiful, that is dirty, that is good, that is bad. We didn't do that. We just took it in for what it is, and suddenly it became beautiful.
So it's all in the mind, like you had mentioned. I think
so. Yeah.
Let me also ask about another scene that I felt it over here.
Sorry, Kais. Can I just interrupt you for a second there?
Please.
I was just going back to this thought. I don't want to be left saying that when there's people struggling to survive, not finding enough jobs to work for their food and water. Of course, that's a struggle. I'm not saying it's all in their mind. There's definitely struggle in this world. I'm just saying, that a lot of it is just by how you judge the situation, and there's more to it than hard work and tough conditions to life. So that's what I'm trying to say.
I think that's right.
I don't want to be.
No, I think that was a good clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So the other scene that sort of I felt on the edge of my seat while I was watching it is when you were or about to go into the DRC, and you had to load your bikes up on the ferry, on the boat, and you had this large group of people who were, I mean, they all wanted to make some money, right? Because this is how they earn their living and support their families or support themselves and so on. But it seemed a very tense situation, especially when you have what seems like a lot of, male bravado going on there.
Yeah.
And you're not by yourself, so you're with Josephine. And in certain cultures, women are looked at as lesser than men. And I mean, we even saw that in the movie, how many times she was asked, "You're a woman? You're a woman?"
Yeah.
In shock. And so here you have all of these guys sort of swarming on you, it felt like.
Yeah.
And Josephine. And I don't know, for me, it felt tense. How do you control that? Like, it could go bad so quickly, and I'm glad it didn't. How how did you manage that? Not just that situation, but I guess especially that situation, but the whole trip. I'm sure you had concerns for Josephine, especially at that time and during the trip.
Yeah, traveling with your girlfriend or wife is quite different because you automatically take on this protective role. So when I was traveling on my own, I didn't care would I slept in a ditch on the side of the road. I didn't need much comfort or luxury or anything. It's not that Josephine needs a 5-star hotel, but I couldn't live with myself if I maneuvered ourselves into a dangerous situation where she were harmed or hurt or something. So that's always on your mind. This situation in particular, where we were in the mercy of these harbor workers, that was very stressful because it could have gone either way at any moment. And I think the way we handle the situation comes from many experiences from traveling. I remember when I left, and I was quite young, on other trips, I was very much with my head through the wall kind of thing. I got aggressive and or tried to control the situation, and I had very different outcomes. But with experience, you're a little wiser and you try different things. By the way, this is one of the perks of solo travelers. When you travel on your own and you have no people around you that know you every day with every situation, you can try on a new personality and react to any situation in a completely different way and see what comes out of it. You wouldn't normally come up with the idea or try it if you have friends around you, because they would go, "Who are you? Are you schizophrenic?" But if you're a solo traveler, you can do this and you can play with life and other people and yourself. You find out who you really are and who you can be. So what we learned, we applied at this particular situation, and also at all the checkpoint crossings in Nigeria, which are known to be very, well, how do you say it?
Challenging?
Yes, challenging. So what we do is a little bit, it's a mix. It's like what happens in improv comedy and also what happens in martial arts. Basically, it's never no. You don't say no, you don't block anything, right? You say yes, but. That's what you do in comedy. And in martial arts, you use the energy of the opponent and divert it or move it into a different direction that works for you. And that's the same thing we intuitively do now in tricky situations like that border crossing with all these harbor workers. So
that must come from your experience in traveling. It's not, I don't think most of us have that ability to do that like that quickly. Like you develop that over, I'm sure.
I think so.
Travel, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that all worked out well.
Yeah. It's the challenges that make you grow, and then the next challenge you can take on and learn more. Yeah, it's a good way. I mean, that's why we travel. I think it has many benefits. Life throws challenges at you every day in a new form and way, and you just, most of the time you're kind of overwhelmed, but you still deal with it, and you learn.
When you prep for these trips, so okay, the first one you started in 2008 to 2011. 3-year trip. Then you took a 3-year hiatus.
Yeah.
And then in 2014 you went again for 3 years. It's
Yes.
2020, so you had 3 years. So I think you're due for another 3-year trip right now.
Yeah.
You could be in 3-year cycles. So how
True.
do you prep for something like this? Logistically, I mean, your work, your home, your family, trying to, where do you start?
Well, as I said, in my early 20s, I kind of started getting into this lifestyle. So for me now, it's much easier to go on a trip. If you tell me, Daniel, you have to go on a 1-year or 2-year trip tomorrow, I could be ready, because I know what I need. If you told someone else, it would take them like it took me during my first trips. It takes you a lot longer. It's not so much logistics. They also play a role. For example, telling your parents you'll be gone for a while, stuff like that. But Joey and I, we don't own a lot of things. We own very little, so we can easily pack our suitcases and store them somewhere, and then take the things we need. So we're not very. Our jobs are mobile. We can work from anywhere or what we can do anywhere. We're not attached to it too much. Joey would be willing to find another job tomorrow. She does her best and everything, but it's not that she's married to it.
Yeah.
So we're kind of, it's the mindset is flexible to it.
Yeah.
So we only rent an apartment, so the logistics are very easy to stop or put on hold. So that's easy. So the other thing is the mindset. The first time you go on a big trip, you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you need, and that's normal and it's fine. You should enjoy it, because it'll never be like this again. So what everyone does, including me, is you try to compensate your, I don't want to say incapability, but your naiveness. I don't know. Yeah, is that a word? Is that a word? No. So your lack of experience. You want to compensate your lack of experience with gadgets. That's what I did. What a lot of people do. I meet people on the road and they carry trailers full of stuff they never need. So navigation tools, tents, and cooking stuff and everything.
Yeah.
So you buy everything you need and you think you need, and you never do. So
on that, I saw this,
yes.
This photo on your website. So that's you, Josephine, and it looks like you've got everything laid out. Is this everything that you guys carried on your trip?
Yeah, that's everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
That's not a lot.
It's not too much. And I have to say, it doesn't look like it on this picture, but about 40 to 50% is just movie making stuff, because we wanted to share our experience with you guys. So we carried cameras, obviously, but also laptops, so we could capture the movie files and photos and save them and put them on hard drives. So we had a drone also. We had backup cameras, and everything comes with a cable and a charger and an adapter and everything. There's a lot of stuff that we wouldn't need if we were writing a book. Because that's what traveling makes very clear to you, because when you're traveling on a motorcycle or anything other than a car, everything that you have goes through your hands every day. And every day you get to think, do I need this? Do I want to unpack this in the evening and pack it in the morning? And then you drop it, you give it away. And what remains is really what you need.
Yeah, so you become more efficient, I guess, over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense.
And for me also, that made me less attached to things also. I was, when you're on the road and you're enjoying it and you're loving climbing a new mountain or meeting new people, then it's like often it comes to your mind like, do I need this new phone or this new jacket, or should I stay on the road for another month or two?
Mm.
This is your currency. Time becomes your currency rather than things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I noticed also in regards to equipment.
And then, like from a motorcycle perspective, I mean, there's wear and tear, there's obviously breakdowns and so on. In that photo, I didn't see many motorcycle like spare parts or anything like that. So how did you manage that? And the motorcycle that you rode, did you choose it because it just happened to be your motorcycle, or did you choose a motorcycle that you sort of knew the inside and out of every bolt? Actually, there was a scene like that in the movie, and are able to fix it on the road as you go.
Yeah. Okay. So first, the parts and the tools. During my first big trip, I carried a lot of spare parts that people told me would very likely break along the way. And a lot of things broke on the trip, but barely those that I carried broke, but other things. So I had a lot of shipping back and forth to do. So on the second trip, I said, I'm not going to take any spare parts, because when I need them or when we need them, we'll find a way then. And very often it is a situation or an occasion where you can meet new people, and then it'll be a breakdown can be a wonderful experience because you need the help of other people. So that's how I kind of handled it. And as far as tools go, we really shrunk that down to a minimum. I remember in Mali, I met this very wonderful Australian motorcyclist, and we had good time, exchanged a lot of travel stories. But he carried torque wrenches, two, I think. One from 10 to 80 Newton meters and one from 80 to 200 Newton meters. So he had a very extensive tool set to fix his bike. And it's fine. I mean, his joy of riding was diminished because he carried so much weight. You can't swing and motorcycle around that easily. But the way we approached it is we only took the tools and the parts that we needed in order to get out of the middle of nowhere to some place where we can fix it. Because anywhere in the world, if you go to a major city, you'll find torque wrenches, or a mechanic that'll say, here's 2 square meters of space, you can work here, you can use my tools, I help you. It's very easy. Anywhere in the world, we talked to mechanics and they were all open. This is something we kind of observe. People that work with their hands, they're the first to offer you help.
Especially I find like people in poorer cultures, let's say, I find them much more giving and willing to help. And I think we saw that in your movie too.
Sure. I mean, there's people willing to give in any culture, rich people, poor people. I'm not sure if I could make the distinction, but yeah, our experience with mechanics was very cool. They're all even if we didn't speak the same language, they were very helpful. So we carried a minimum, and that really served as well. So cable ties, duct tape, the tools that help you to fix a flat tire, stuff like that. To get out, if you have a breakdown and you need to ride a couple 100 kilometers to just get somewhere, just take this. And don't take any tools that you can't use. It's not good to carry special Torx keys that can open up the engine and you don't know what to do with the engine, right? So don't carry that.
Right.
Just what you need. I think it's what I find is sensible. What is the second part of the question? Sorry, I forgot.
I don't remember. I think that was it.
Something, tools and motorcycle.
I think it was just the bike. If you chose the bike because you knew it inside out, or I'm guessing.
Okay. So the story with the bike is the following. I rode BMWs on both the trips, but I'm not married to the brand at all. I don't care. For me, any motorcycle is fun. So, and I've met a lot of people who rode on inadequate bikes and had a fantastic trip. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, the inadequate bike makes for a good adventure. If everything goes smoothly, you know, what's the point? So, but I chose the Beamers like a coincidence. I mean, I was 18, I got my license, and I looked at the papers. I'm not sure if there was internet back then, and I looked at. I wanted to buy a chopper bike, like a cruiser or something first, because I said to myself, if I buy a bike like this, I won't be going fast, and it's maybe safer for me. So I talked to friends, and they said, "Don't buy a chopper. You need the bike where you can go everywhere. You know, like a dual sport kind of enduro road bike that gives you a greater possibilities." And that made sense to me. So I looked at enduro bikes, and there were a couple back then, and I only chose the BMW because it had a drive shaft rather than a chain. And I said, well, that saves me on maintenance. I'll buy that. So I rode the R80 GS for 15 years and loved it. And then for the last trip, I updated the motorcycle to a 1200 GS only because I needed a newer bike, because the old one I would have put a lot of money in to make it ready for the trip. And I wanted to put the same money into something that's more fun, maybe a little bit newer, you know, more power, more fun.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I chose the 1200 GS is because I test rode a bunch of bikes that I thought would be suitable, but only because I was used to the boxer engine with the low center of gravity, and you know, the cylinder sticking out at the side, and the kind of the way it behaves on a mountainous, on a windy mountain road. I like that. I got used to it, and that's the only reason why I chose the newer BMW, because it had the same engine, same specifics and setup. So that's the only reason. So it's a
Okay. That's a
coincidence.
good reason.
Yeah.
So I mentioned before about this 3-year cycle. So
Yes.
what have you been up to since the movie?
The movie finished late last year. It took some out of me. Is a very stressful process.
I can imagine. I wouldn't even know where to start. Like taking video footage from 3 years, going through it all, chopping it, prioritizing it, weaving it together into a story. I mean, that does not sound like fun.
No, it's not fun. I mean, I've been working as a filmmaker for quite a few years now, and other projects from other people or commercial projects, whatever, I approach very differently, and I get through it much more easily.
Right.
But because it was me and Joey that the project was about, you know, it's like you're cutting at your core at the same time. You know, you look at the story from so many different angles, and you also look at yourself, who you are and why you did that, and why didn't do that. And so that was more stressful than the actual work of putting it together, looking at your own life through the computer screen. That took something out of me, and I'm not sure if I could do it again. Probably not. Wouldn't want to. But so I finished in fall last year, and then we had we toured in various cinemas early this year, basically until the last day before COVID shut down all the cinemas in Germany. So we were one of the last to screen it. We toured through about 40, 50 cinemas in Germany, and
oh wow,
that was a lot of fun to go into exchange with the audience to see what they think and what they saw. They saw other things than I intended to put in, and so it was very interesting. I learned a lot. So and after that, I just picked up where I left off with my freelance work, and I'm trying to put a little bit more money on the bank account, because the movie making, it took 2 years to finish the film, and we had only one income, Joey's, so they put a dent in our situation, and we don't know what's next. We're both the traveling kind. I think it can be
Daniel?
said. Yes?
I'm not sure, Daniel, if you can hear me, but your video stopped. Hopefully you'll be
your video stopped too, but I can hear you.
We'll just wait a moment for Daniel to see if he can rejoin us. Oh, there you are. Welcome back.
Hi. How long was I gone?
Maybe like 10 seconds, not even.
Okay.
So you dropped off just after mentioning how you were down to one income, and that put a dent in your situation.
Okay, so I'm just back freelancing, doing freelance work as a filmmaker, and that's been fine. It's enjoyable.
And I think you mentioned in our discussion earlier that you're writing a book.
Oh yes, I'm doing that on the side. I promised the book to some of the crowdfunding supporters. So I still have to do this. I'm like halfway with the book. It's coming along, but it's also a lot of work. And I also want to put a kind of different story in the book. It's the same story, but a different take on it. I don't want to tell what happened. I want to talk about what the experiences do to you as a traveler. So slightly different, yeah.
And how's that experience to write a book, to get it all out from here, your memory down onto paper? How's that?
It's both. It's liberating, but it's also a little bit painful as well, because as I mentioned with the movie making, you kind of look at your own life and your decisions that you made and the things that you did, which is interesting.
Yeah. So people can follow you or check in on you at open-explorers.com. You'll be able to see your first movie there, Somewhere Else Together, and the current one, Somewhere Else Tomorrow, and the current one, Somewhere Else Together. Is there information about your book or anything else on the page that people should be looking at?
There's a couple links to some of the charity work that we did.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Tell us, because I thought that was a big part of both movies, and I love that. Tell us a bit about the charities that you're supporting.
All right. So there's a couple of charities that we came in touch with and that we are friends with to this day. But it's not like we looked for it. It's not that we embarked on a trip to say we want to save the world and we want to help the kids here and there, or a certain cause. It was not like that. It is just that naturally we got drawn into certain situations, and things evolve from meeting people and hearing about their struggle, as we were discussing. And then when you're in it, when you're part of it, when you live like them, because you're living, at least we did, we lived on a very small budget. We wanted to stretch the little money that we had for as long as possible. So when you live like them, when you stay at the outskirts of Antigua in Guatemala, and you walk the same path that the people walk into their huts, and they have no electricity, and they cook their food with firewood, and there's 5 people in one room. And yeah, so when you live like that, when you're part of it, when you really understand where they're coming from, it is very natural to do something you to help. I mean, people helped us all the time with their time, and sometimes even money. They helped us to fix the bikes or gave us shelter or food or whatever. So there wasn't even a question that came up. And we saw a single mom with 3 kids that was struggling to get the food on the table. Yeah, we helped. We talked to our audience, the people who regular read our blog or followed us on social media. We reached out. We said, look, this is the situation, who wants to help? And there was a number of situations where that happened. Not all of them we did capture on camera, but it is really fantastic how much attention a traveler draws, and how much he can kind of direct the energies. For example, in 2009 or 10, I had this encounter with this orphanage in Nepal. So we helped them have the kids for the kids to have a Christmas. So we bought some presents and made a donation so they could pay their rent and stuff. And that stuck with us for years and years. We stayed in touch. And I think about 6 or 7 years later, we were in somewhere Central America. Nepal had an earthquake, and the building that the orphanage was in was damaged, so they couldn't continue living in it. So all we did is reach out and tell their story, and all the people that followed us on social media helped in whatever way and capacity they could. So even one of our sponsors, Touratech, that was the most amazing thing to me. Without asking or making a big fuss about it, they just dropped me an email and said, we just packed a box with tents, sleeping mats, sleeping bags, dried food, and headlamps, and whatever they had in their equipment that they thought would help a country after an earthquake, and shipped it off to them. And I was like, that's so fantastic. And that's all we do. We see the problem, and if we can help, we help. It's not that we try to save the world. It's natural, right?
I think it's amazing, and it's one of the beautiful parts of the movie, for sure. Daniel, I guess we'll wrap it up because we're coming up to an hour. I want to thank you so much again for creating the movie, allowing us to screen it at this year's festival. Sure. I really encourage people to go and check out Somewhere Else Together. It's a beautiful story with some incredible scenery, amazing and incredible adventures, and wonderful stories about human connection and searching and finding. That's what I really took away from it, and I loved it very much, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Okay, thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Daniel, and we'll talk to you soon.